"I told you we should have waited for your father and gone with him," exclaimed the tall, blonde woman in her 50s, her hands wringing in despair as she stood next to a stout, short man in a sun helmet who was currently tinkering under the hood of a foreign automobile. "We would never have been stuck in this damned desert if we had. Kolya would have known what to do. The devil tempted me to come with you, and now we're lost." Despite the woman's worries, Valerie didn't seem to share them, or perhaps he simply didn't want to add to her distress. He gazed at the scorching Tunisian sun and reassured his mother, "Don't worry so much, Mom. We'll fix the car and be on our way. Besides, you should see the sunset over the desert. It's breathtaking here." He chuckled and added, "There was no point in waiting for Papa. He won't leave the hotel until they've drunk all the old Yemeni coffee. He's always been that way, a true friend of his youth." The woman expressed that she felt her friend could have shown more respect after all these years by inviting them to stay at his house. She blushed slightly for some reason. Valera responded with a chuckle, saying that Ali's 4 wives would be against such a neighbor and that there was no room for a 5th. However, the woman did not hear his last words as she was startled by a huge lizard that suddenly appeared from behind a rock. She only heard her name, which was enough to upset her. She preferred to be called Mother instead of Stepmother, as she disliked the latter term. Valera apologized for forgetting to use the preferred term. Valerie delved back into the engine of the faulty motorbike, which Ali had provided them with, and memories flooded back of his stepmother's sudden appearance in their home. Her arrival caused Valerie's father, Vladimir Ivanovich, a skilled plastic surgeon, to abandon his 30-year marriage and eject Valerie's mother, Inga Gavrilovna, from their ancestral home. It was clear that the intrusion of this stranger, who was like a hornet invading a beehive to taste fresh honey, was unwelcome to everyone except the person who had invited her into their house. The surgeon was utterly smitten with his patient, as if she had put him under a spell. Fortunately, he had the sense not to sever ties with his wife and son, although he was willing to do anything for his new paramour. He may have experienced some sense of guilt, but he didn't refuse when his father invited him on a trip. Despite his eagerness to prove to his father that decent family men don't behave that way, Valera couldn't decline the invitation. The memory of his mother's tears still haunted him. She had moved in with his grandmother after her husband had killed her, but even after a few months, she couldn't shake off her depression. Valera probably agreed to go on the journey with his father to discuss the recent events in a calm environment, hoping that his father would come to his senses and realize that no woman on earth could compare to his mother. However, the conversation proved to be futile, and it only exacerbated the already strained relationship between the 2 generations. After numerous futile attempts to connect with his father, Valera was preparing to fly back home. However, fate intervened a few days ago when he unexpectedly bumped into his friend Ali on one of the narrow streets of the old city. This encounter influenced Valera's decision to postpone his departure, and the friends were overjoyed to see each other again. Ali promptly invited Volodya, his son, and his son's beautiful wife to his house, and the trio happily accepted the invitation. That evening, Ali anticipated meeting Inga, his friend's sweet and gentle wife. However, to his surprise, a woman of an entirely different demeanor was by his friend's side. To avoid offending the gracious host, Valera decided to join the dinner. Despite his attempts to conceal it, Valera noticed the piercing glances Ali exchanged with his stepmother, and it left him feeling uneasy. The next morning, while his father and his new love interest were still asleep, Valera rushed to confide in his friend, and their conversation was a lengthy one. He unexpectedly found himself stranded in a barren desert with his stepmother, their car broken down and with no apparent reason. The location was extremely remote, devoid of any signs of civilization, and with no cellular service to call for help. To make matters worse, due to their oversight, they had no water or food supplies, as they were only supposed to make a short trip. As hunger set in, his stepmother became increasingly irritable, and the situation was not helped by the scorching sun that beat down mercilessly on them, causing them both to be drenched in sweat. As the Stepson struggled to fix the car, his stepmother sought refuge under a boulder where a lizard had just scurried from. Gazing with hope at the large, fleshy cactus, she called out, "Mom." Her daughter's piercing scream echoed in her ears, causing her immense discomfort. The woman's head swiveled from side to side on the pillow, as if searching for something. "Tell me, dear, is it safe to eat?" she asked her son, desperately hungry and thirsty. "No, Mom," he replied. "It's bitter and unappetizing, and will only give us diarrhea. Besides, you might get pricked by its sharp spines, and we'll need you to be in good health." The man's attempt at humor went over Maria Nikolaevna's head, as she was a natural blonde. Fortunately, the desert's twilight fell swiftly, and the scorching sun began to recede towards the west. A refreshing breeze swept in from the Mediterranean Sea, cooling the bodies of the unfortunate people and giving them a glimmer of hope for survival. Valera plopped down next to his stepmother, stretching out his exhausted legs. He gestured towards the massive orange sun sinking below the horizon and quipped, "Well, we didn't quite make it, but I still kept my promise. Look, Mom, what a magnificent sunset. You can't get this kind of view from the hotel window." Maria Nikolaevna was moved by the sight and shed a few tears, sparingly, from dehydration. However, Valera couldn't help but worry about their situation. "The only problem is that if help doesn't arrive tomorrow, the sun will scorch us like a lamb on a spit." His stepmother lamented that she wished she were with her husband during this time of need, to which Valera replied, "Who needs a father when there's a man like me around? You have to seize every opportunity in life, no matter how little is left. That's my motto. I always get what I want." He moved closer to his stepmother as he spoke, his tone suddenly intense. Without hesitation, he embraced the woman in an attempt to comfort her, but she took his words too literally. Desiring one last pleasure, she aggressively kissed him, leaving him stunned as she mounted him like a thoroughbred Arabian racehorse and rode him across the desert, expending all her unspent energy. The woman tormented her stepson under the moon and stars for hours, leaving him struggling for breath under her pressure. Suddenly, a bright beam of light from a lantern shone in her face, causing her to cry out in surprise and jump off her steed when she saw two men on camels. Help had arrived, but it was too late to save the stepson from the torment of his stepmother. The woman immediately recognized her husband and Ali among the horsemen, but little did she know that Valerie and the cunning Arab had orchestrated the entire love scene. It turned out that Ali was actually her ex-boyfriend, whom she had callously discarded in favor of a wealthy plant director. She had no interest in developing any further relationships with him or any other man, for that matter, unless they could provide her with financial gain. Ali had shared with Valerie the story of his happy family, and together they had concocted a plan to help solve their problem. Nicholas, on the other hand, was absolutely livid when he witnessed the spectacle unfold before him. It was a sight that he wouldn't wish on his worst enemy, and he immediately set out to find his wife. As he dismounted his trusty steed, he took out his knife and swiftly cut down the prickly cactus that had threatened Maria. It was a clear indication of his determination to protect his wife from any harm, no matter the cost. "Kalenka, what were you thinking?" "We were on the brink of death. Valerka and I were barely holding on. We wanted to go out with a bang. It's not my fault. He attacked me first and violated my honor. I was simply taking advantage of his vulnerability." These were the feeble excuses of an unfaithful wife who kept retreating in the face of impending consequences. After receiving a well-deserved punishment, she ran through the desert like a wild animal, howling in agony. Thankfully, the men who were with her did not abandon her in the wilderness and brought her to the safety of a hotel. However, she had to make her own way back home. On that same day, Nikolai Ivanovich flew home with Valerie, And as they bid farewell to wise Ali, he humbly apologized to his son. Please forgive me, my son. There is no one in the world better than your mother. I hope it's not too late to make amends. These words were spoken with sincerity, and he was absolutely right.